60 fights, 0 losses, 0 idea who he was. That's not a flaw in the story. That's the whole story. The strongest swordsman in Japanese history spent 30 years winning and still didn't know his own face in the mirror. Stay with me, because what he did about that is the part nobody teaches you. And by the end of this video, you're going to realize you've been making the exact same mistake he made, just with a phone instead of a sword. Here's the uncomfortable math. A man can be undefeated and still be a stranger to himself. Musashi proved it. Province after province, school after school, he beat every strategist put in front of him. 60 encounters, not 1 loss. By the time most men are still figuring out rent, he was already a legend villages whispered about when he walked through. And he tells you in his own hand that none of it counted. At 30, he looked back and called his own victories luck, natural talent. Weak opponents, not mastery. The most feared swordsman alive is telling you his win streak meant nothing, because winning and knowing yourself are 2 completely different wars, and he'd only been fighting one of them his entire life without realizing it. That's the trap. You've seen it. Maybe you're in it right now, and you don't even know it yet. You confuse output for identity, numbers on a screen for meaning, attention for self. You post the gym pic, the grind quote, the hustle montage, and somewhere underneath all of it, a small voice asks whether any of this is actually you or just a costume that happens to get applause. Most men never answer that question. They just get better at ignoring it. Musashi didn't get his answer in a duel. He didn't get it from a crowd. He got it 30 years later, completely alone, in a place you'd never expect. Age 60, a mountain called Iwato, on the island of Kyushu. No students, no swords crossing, no one watching. Just a cave, a brush, and every question he'd been outrunning since he was a teenager, holding a blade for the first time. That cave is where the Book of 5 Rings was written, not during the 60 wins, after, in silence, when there was nothing left to prove and no one left to perform for. Sit with that for a second, because it breaks a rule almost every man lives by without noticing. The self does not show up during the performance. It shows up after the performance ends and you're still sitting there alone, with no one left to convince. And that's the part that should scare you a little, because most men arrange their entire lives to make sure that moment never happens. Musashi built a teaching he called attitude, no attitude. Sounds simple. It isn't. On the surface, it's about sword stances. Underneath, it's a warning most men need and never get. The second you lock yourself into one fixed posture, one fixed way of holding yourself up, you've already lost. Not because the posture is wrong, because rigidity is what breaks first. A man who needs a mask just to function isn't strong. He's brittle. One hard hit, and the whole identity cracks open, and there's nothing structural underneath to catch him when it does. Watch for this. The tough guy who can't sit in silence without checking his phone 40 times an hour. The player who's never spent 10 straight minutes alone with his own thoughts. That's not a personality. That's armor with nothing behind it. And armor with nothing behind it is just a costume that gets heavier every year you carry it. I'll tell you exactly how I found this out, because it happened to me writing scripts for this channel. The first draft I ever wrote back, I heard a voice that wasn't mine, polished, performing, built to sound like a man I thought I was supposed to be, instead of the one actually holding the pen. It took months of cutting that voice down before something real started coming through underneath it. Months of finding out how much of what I was writing was mine and how much was borrowed for the applause. That process never actually ends. It just gets quieter. Now, here's someone you'll recognize faster than you think. Meet Harvey, 19, works retail, posts 3 times a day. Online, he's a machine. Gym selfies, hustle captions, quotes about kings and wolves he's never read the source of. At home, alone, he can't finish a single thought without reaching for his phone. Then one night, his screen dies mid-scroll, and he's sitting in the dark with nothing to check and no one watching. 4 minutes pass before he realizes something that guts him. He can't remember the last time he made a decision without first calculating how it would look to somebody else. He doesn't fix it that night, but for the first time, he doesn't reach for the phone either. He just sits there, in the dark, letting the silence do something his entire feed was designed to prevent. That's the disease in one room, not weakness. Dependency on an audience that was never even watching that closely to begin with. And here's the part that should actually scare you more than anything else in this video. Most men go their entire lives without their screen ever dying. They never get the 4 minutes. They never get the accident that forces the silence on them. Musashi had to climb a mountain to get his. You might not even need that much. You might just need to put the phone in another room for one night and see what's still standing when nobody's watching. Musashi wrote something that cuts through all of this cleaner than anything modern. Do not think dishonestly. The way is in training, not the highlight reel, not the polished cut, the unglamorous repetition nobody claps for. He puts the work before the identity, because the identity doesn't exist yet until the work builds it, one rep at a time, in a room with no audience. Think about what that actually means for a second. Every rep you do for the camera is wasted, not because it doesn't build muscle, because it doesn't build you. Musashi trained for decades in rooms nobody filmed. That's not a coincidence. That's the entire mechanism. The self gets built in the unwitnessed hours, not the posted ones. And later, in the same book, something even colder and more useful. Step by step, walk the 1,000-mile road. No shortcuts, no cave wisdom handed out for free. You don't get to skip to the enlightenment part. You earn the silence by surviving everything that would have destroyed you a year before you were ready for it. There's no cheat code here. There's no video that fixes this for you, including this one. There's just the road and whether you're willing to walk it without an audience clapping at every mile marker. Now let's leave Japan for a second, because this pattern doesn't belong to one country or one century. It shows up everywhere men are forced to stop performing. February 1884. Theodore Roosevelt's wife and his mother die in the same house, on the same day, hours apart. He's 25. He writes in his diary that the light has gone out of his life. Then he closes that page and never writes about it again. Most men would have stayed in New York and let the grief run the rest of their life from the driver's seat. He didn't. He left. Cattle ranching in the Dokkodo Badlands, freezing nights, physical labor that broke men twice his size. He wasn't running from the loss. He was burning off the version of himself that couldn't survive carrying it. The man who eventually walked back into public life wasn't the same one who left. That man became president. Here's a second one, because one example is a coincidence, and two is a pattern you can actually use. 27 years. That's how long Nelson Mandela spent in prison, most of it on Robben Island, cut off from everything that used to define him. Status gone, freedom gone, the version of himself the world knew before his arrest, gone. What came out of that cell decades later wasn't a broken man performing forgiveness for cameras. It was someone who had already done the internal war in complete isolation, long before anyone was watching him do it. By the time the cameras finally showed up, the work was already finished. That's the part people get backwards. They think transformation happens in public. It never does. It just gets revealed there. Loss did what comfort never could in both cases. It stripped the performance down to nothing and left only whatever was actually load-bearing underneath. And here's the question that should be sitting in your chest right now. If your comfort got stripped away tonight, if the phone died and stayed dead, if the audience disappeared permanently, what would actually be left standing under your name? Now flip it, because not every story ends with the mask coming off. Mad Men isn't ancient philosophy, but it understood something Musashi would have recognized instantly. Don Draper spends the entire show performing a name that was never his, a stolen identity built on top of a dead man's paperwork, success stacked on success, and none of it ever fills the hole underneath. He gets the corner office, he gets the family, he gets everything the world tells a man to want. And every single season he's emptier than the one before it, because you cannot build a self on borrowed foundations, no matter how good the performance looks from the outside. That's the warning version of this story. Musashi is what happens when a man finally stops performing. Draper is what happens when he never does. You've felt echoes of this even in fiction closer to home, whether you clocked it or not. Vagabond, the manga built around Musashi's own life, opens with a boy named Shinmen Takezo, a beast. All violence, zero direction, feared by every village he passes through. It takes losing everything, his name, his reputation, nearly his own life, before Takezo dies completely and Musashi is actually born in his place. The name change isn't decoration, it's the entire point of the story, and it took him losing every external marker of who he was before the internal one was finally allowed to surface. That's the part almost everyone skips. They want the cave wisdom without the 30 years of duels that earned it. Nobody gets to jump straight to the ending, no matter how many self-improvement videos promise otherwise. In his final section, The Book of the Void, Musashi strips his own philosophy down to its coldest point. Wisdom has existence. Principle has existence. The way has existence. Then the line that should stop you completely. Spirit is nothingness. Not empty in the sad sense. Empty in the sense of unclaimed. No fixed mask to defend, because defending a fixed identity is exactly what makes a man breakable in the first place. The strongest version of you isn't the one with the most armor. It's the one with nothing left that needs defending. So here's what actually changes tonight, not someday, not after some imaginary version of yourself shows up to handle it for you. Stop performing your personality and start watching which parts of it vanish the second nobody's looking. Those parts were never yours. They were rented, and you've been paying interest on them for years without noticing the bill come due. The parts that stay when the phone dies, when the room goes quiet, when there's nobody left to impress. Those are the only parts worth building anything on top of. You don't find yourself by adding more, not more followers, more gear, more curated image, more proof for an audience that was never watching as closely as you feared it was. You find yourself by cutting until there's nothing left to cut. Whatever's still standing after that cut, that's the one thing in you that was ever real to begin with. Everything else was a costume, and you've been paying rent on it for longer than you'd like to admit. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more videos that YouTube keeps shadow banning, join me on Patreon. Also, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. I'll see you soon.